Bottom of Ayin Chesam base 78b.
At the Mishnah?
Yeah.
Oh, at the Mishnah.
Mishnah on Rishus L'Shlucha the Kaddish is bita v'holachu v'kitcha. Okay, so what happened? Somebody appointed a messenger, and we saw this mission before, and he went ahead and he married off his daughter as well. The question here is, whose Kiddushin came first? Im shaloi kadmu. If the father's Kiddushin is first, Kiddush of Kiddushin, the father's Kiddushin is valid, the messenger is not valid. V'im shal shlucha kadmu, but if the messenger is first, Kiddush of Kiddushin, then the messenger's Kiddushin is valid. V'im eini yedea, and if he doesn't know, shneim nois get. They both give a divorce. In other words, it's a suffix whose Kiddushin came first, whether it was the messenger that was valid or the father. The imrotz, if they want, echanais and get, one of them could give a divorce and the other one can marry her. And similarly, same story. A woman gave permission to her messenger to accept Kiddushin on her behalf. So she appointed a messenger and she received Kiddushin herself. If hers is first, then her Kiddushin is valid. If the messenger's Kiddushin is first, his is valid. If you don't know, so it's a suffix, they both need to divorce. Or alternatively, one of them could divorce and one of them can marry her. Okay.
Why would you send a messenger and also do what you said?
So we'll get to it. So It could be that basically the Gemara is sort of trying to eliminate the possibility that what actually she really wants is the better of both options. So she wants to be able to choose which suitor was better, from whether the one she chose or the one the shliach chose.
Oh, okay.
So, and the Mishnah says it doesn't make a difference. We don't presume that she meant to do hers on condition that if a more eligible candidate comes around, she can nullify hers. It doesn't work that way. Okay. But tzricha, the yeshmin gabi day, if would have just said the father, mishum the gavra kimle b'yochsan. The father sort of knows who's eligible in lineage, and therefore that's why the father wants Kiddushin to be valid, even if the messenger receives Kiddushin. However, it's the like have a Kiddushin. Maybe we should say that she means that she intended on invalidating her own Kiddushin if the messenger finds somebody suitable. Would have just said her, it's a daiko minsava. We would say that a woman, she chooses her suitor pretty carefully, and therefore her Kiddushin should be valid, and the messenger's Kiddushin should not be. But the father, maybe the father means to sort of, it would be the best of either his option or the messenger's option. So what he means to do is, he means to receive the Kiddushin on her behalf only if the messenger doesn't find a more eligible candidate. But if he does, then his Kiddushin should not be valid. So therefore, tzricha is necessary. Okay. And now we get into one of the great topics of Talmud. This is the question of whether we go to a chazaka de mikar or a chazaka de hashta.
Of course.
What? Chazaka de mikar or chazaka de hashta. What does that mean? Chazaka de mikar is sort of the standard presumption. If I know that you own the house, I presume that you continue to own the house.
Okay.
It's very likely that this is the basis of what we call cheskes moment as well, which should be the house. There's another understanding of cheskes moment as well. If I saw you alive, presumably you still are alive, right? And if I'm not sure if somebody's still alive, well, presumably they're still alive. Okay. It's basically keep the presumption. If the guy if the last time you saw the kid, he was still a child, presumably he's still a child. Now that last one that I gave you, a child, is a little bit problematic. Why? Because the house, maybe you'll sell it, maybe you won't, right? Is somebody's alive? Presumably he's alive. Hopefully he didn't die. But a child inevitably is going to grow out of childhood. So the child is a little bit of a different type of chazak de mikara. It's sort of a little bit weaker. The reason why is because we say it's a asuya lehishtanas. Under normal conditions, it's going to change necessarily. Okay, so let's begin. Itmar, we learned. Kitcha Aviya B'derech v'Kitcha Atzma Be'ir. Her father was on a trip and he found a potential mate and he received Kiddushin for his daughter. But guess what? His daughter decided to. His daughter also found somebody, and this was on the same day. The kitchen Atzma, she found somebody in the city. Okay, then they found out the Harehi Bageris. The father can only receive Kiddushin when the girl is a girl or a naira. A naira is 6 months after she becomes after she begins maturity. However, it is possible for that process to be faster than 6 months. Okay. In other words, if the physical characteristics develop quicker than that. Okay, so now what's the question? So today she's a begeris. Her father cannot receive Kiddushin. Do we say that, look, she has chazak in the mikara, until now her father was able to receive Kiddushin, so presumably she became a begeris at the last moment, and therefore her father's Kiddushin is valid? Or do we say, look, she's a begeris today, presumably it didn't happen overnight, so therefore we should say that, look, right now she's a begeris, presumably she always was a begeris. Okay. Rav Amar Harei begeris Fanena. Rav says, look, she's a begeris, she's mature. Shmuel says we're not sure what to do, and therefore we're concerned about both Kiddushin, whether the Kiddushin of the father and the Kiddushin of the girl. So Gemara says, Amos, what exactly happened there? If we're talking about within the 6-month period, now typically a begeris is going to take 6 months, but not more than 6 months. So if it's within 6 months, well, you should say that presumably she still is an ira, she's still eligible. And if you find her a begeris, well, that's sort of the exception. It's a right. You presume that right now she became a begeris. Okay, so Gemara says Ella Achashish. It must be after 6 months. So Gemara says 1 second. After 6 months, which Shmuel say that we are concerned for the Kiddushin of the father and the girl. That there's only 6 months from when a woman begins puberty. So therefore, according to Shmuel, it's certainly the case that after 6 months, she certainly is a begeris. Therefore, the father's Kiddushin would be 0. So what happened? What's the answer? It's the last day of the 6 months. Rav says, since she's a begeris in the afternoon, presumably she's a begeris in the morning also. It was only in the evening. Now, Shmuel again is not saying a certain position. Shmuel is saying it's a suffix. And what Shmuel's saying is that perhaps it's only in the evening where she became a begeris. Okay, now in English, if we had to sort of talk about this conceptually, we would say Rav sort of is a big supporter of the concept of chazaka dehashta. If you see something now, even though it must have changed fairly recently, presume it changed at the earliest possible time in question. And don't say that, look, well, since in the past she was a kid, so she stayed a kid as long as possible. Chazaka dehashta, according to Rav, is more because we know it changed. So therefore, we say the change happened at an earliest possible time. Okay, Ma'ishnomi mikvah. What's the difference in the story of a mikvah? The time. What was the story? Mikvah shenimid v'nim tzachasa. You had a mikvah, you measured it, and it turns out it doesn't have the required amount. Okay, so now what's the question? Well, the mikvah at some point was kosher. Now we know the mikvah is not kosher. So when did the mikvah become non-kosher? Did it happen a second after the last inspection? So it was kosher, and then almost nearly immediately, as quick as physically possible, physically reasonable, it became non-kosher, and therefore everything until that time is not tahar. Or do you say the opposite? Do we say, look, the mikvah was kosher, presume that now that it was measured at the most reasonable physical interval to explain the loss of volume in the mikvah in the most recent past, that's when it became invalid, but not earlier than that.
when it's discovered.
So, for example, let's say the mikveh was checked a month apart. So, and let's say there might be a suspicion of a minor leak. So, if we presume that the chazak and the mikar is the more potent force, we say that sort of the last couple of hours, that's when the mikveh became possible. If we go the other way and we say chazak and hashta, look at it now it's not kosher. Presumably it happened 29 and a half days ago. In other words, you checked it and then immediately it started leaking. And it leaked for 6 hours and then and now it's no more. So what's the story? Okay, any question of a item that was brought to the mikvah is tamei. Okay, what do we see from here? Right now the mikvah is tamei, must have been tamei as until it's most recent as the last inspection that declared it kosher. So the Gemara says, no, not a good proof. Shani Hossam the Ikal Meimer Hamed Tomei Al Cheskasa if Eimer Loy Toval. The Gemara says not a good proof. Why not? Because you could argue and say that the Hamed Tomei Al Cheskasa if Eimer Loy Toval. Instead of looking at the mikvah, look at the item. The item was tamei until you brought it to the mikvah. Now the question is whether this mikvah immersion was valid. Say, well, presumably keep it with the old state. It was tamei. We don't know if it became tahar. Presumably it's still tamei. That would be chazak mikar. Samar says, hold on, Adrab, to the contrary. Hamid mikvah chaskasa. 1 second. If you're telling me, look at the item. The item was tamei yesterday, presumably it's tamei today. But then look at the mikvah. The mikvah was tahar 30 days ago. Right, it was kosher mikvah, so presume today it was also kosher at the time that item went inside. Someone says, what do you mean? You can't say the mikvah was kosher because right now the mikvah is missing something. So chazaka is sort of weakened. Someone says, hold on a second. If that's the case, then with regard to our question of the begeras, how are begeras fanecha? We have a mature woman in front of us. So Gemara says, well, what do you mean? She's mature. That's true, but hashtahu debugger, what happened now? The Gemara says, 1 second, go back to the mikveh then. Hasnami hashtahu dechaser. Let's say that the mikveh became chaser immediately. In other words, Shmuel saying that we are concerned maybe in the morning this girl was not mature. She became mature in the afternoon. 1 second. The mikveh we say is tamei. Why is it tamei? Because arei chasel fanecha. Because the mikveh is missing something. The mikveh is not kosher right now. So we say that it wasn't kosher also yesterday and the day before until last month when they checked it. So why do you say the same thing is true with regard to a begeris? Right now she's a begeris, therefore she was a begeris in the morning, maybe even yesterday, who knows? Okay. So the Gemara says hashtahu devagra. No, it happened now. So the Gemara says, well, then say the same thing to the mikveh, hashtahu dechaser, and say everything is tahar. Okay, so the Gemara explains as follows: Hosan tarti l'reisa, hachal l'reisa. Over there by the mikveh, there's two problems. Number one, the item has a chazak of tamei. The item is presumably tamei. The mikveh, well, the mikveh is sort of in a state of limbo, right? Right now, it's not kosher. So when you combine the fact that right now it's not kosher, along with the chazak and mikar of the item that it was previously tamei, so then we say this is not a kosher tefillah. It's not tahar. However, with regard to a begeris, you don't have both of those components. You only have one component, right? You only have the chazak of the hashla against the chazak of the mikara. Right now, she's a begeris, and in the past she wasn't a begeris. Okay, so we don't know what to do with that. Shmuel says it's a suffix. Okay, so the Gemara says next comparison. Shmuel ma'ishem mechavis. Why is it different than a chavis? The barrel. What was the story of the barrel? The guy had a barrel of wine that he was using to take off trumas ma'asros. This is common. I was in a winery in Israel, and they actually had a barrel, a big. They used to take all the wine that was sort of not the greatest, and they used to put it into the barrel, and they used that to take off trumas ma'asros. So I actually went. So I said I never made the bracha because most of the stuff I bought from the stores had already taken off Trumas Meiser. It's a bracha to say when you take off Trumas Meisers, but this stuff was tevel. It was really, you could not eat it without taking off Trumas Meisers. So I actually took all. I asked them for a glass. I took off Trumas Meisers and then I drank it. It wasn't that bad. Anyway. Okay, so the guy has the barrel that he's using to take off Trumas Meisers. In other words, he has a big barrel somewhere with all the wine, and every time he has a glass of wine, he takes Trumas Meisers, and he presumes that there's wine in the barrel. Sure enough, what happens? Turn into vinegar. Then he finds out it's made out. It's vinegar. Kol Gimel Yamim. Okay, there are two versions here. I guess I go with the first version in Rashi. 1 second. Okay. In other words, it takes at least 3 days for the wine to sort of go sour. So as follows. Let's say he investigated October 1st and November 1st. October 1st, the wine was kosher. It was regular wine. Kosher, not in the halachic sense, in the sense of the English language. It was kosher wine, as in normal, regular. Then he checked on November 1st today, and he finds the wine spoiled. It's vinegar. So he say the first 3 days, October 1, 2, 3, all the truma was kosher. Anything after October 4th, not good. So what is it? But what do we say? We say it's suffix. We don't know what to do with it. Ramina, we asked the question, Chavis HaMikvah. The Chavis on the Mikvah. Ma'asher the Hachabad, Ma'asher the Hachasofik. By Mikvah, we said the item that went into the Mikvah is certainly not Tahor. Not a suffix, whether it's Tahor or not. Whereas by Truma, we say it's a suffix. V'Omer Chanina Misuria, Chanina taught us, Man Tona Chavis, who's the author of the Bryce that says Chavis, from Shimon. It's the opinion of Reb Shimon. The Gabi Mikvah Nami Sveika Mashving. With the story of the Mikvah, he also says it's a suffix. Tanya we learned, whether public or private, I'll explain that we'll explain that when we get to it. It is tummy. Reb Shimon says no. Reb Shimon says it's a suffix. What does this mean? Okay, so now if you remember when we learned Saita, we learned from Saita actually teaches to all suffix tumah that if it's in private, we presume it's tummy. If it's in public, we presume it's tahor. So if you have a question whether something is tahor or tummy, and it's in public area, and a bunch of people touched it, we presume it's tahor. And let's say, for example, we have a grave site, and we don't know where it went. There was a hurricane or whatever, and a tornado, and the tombstone's missing, of no clue where it went. Now, happens to be this tombstone was right next to a public thoroughfare. So wherever the public goes, that's going to be tahor. Even though maybe there's a grave site there, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, and if it's in private domains, we treat it as tamei, but we treat it as a suffix. Thailand, we sort of hang on to it. We don't know what to do with it. Maybe it's tahor, maybe it's tamei. Oh, okay.
So what do you do if it's a suffix? You just
so you sort of have to wait till it's unusable and then dispose of it. You can't make it tamei though. It's truma. You can't make truma tamei for no reason.
So then you have to wait.
So you sort of wait till it's unusable and then you dispose of it.
Oh,
I believe truma tamei you're allowed to burn, so you can burn it. But you'd have to burn it in a fire of tar things, not a fire of tamei things. You follow?
Yes.
You can't let it become tamei.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so that's the opinion of Reb Shimon. Avlo Rabbanon, according to the rabbi's opinion, what do we do? What's the story with the barrel? Tevel l'mafreya. It is tevel. It's not good. It's certainly not valid. Now again, according to Shmuel, why is it tevel? 27 days of the month, right? 28 days to be precise. 28 days from October 4th until November 1st. There was you consider it to be tevel, not you don't take off truma, even though, according to Shmuel would say that it's a suffix. We don't know what to do because Shmuel says by the Begaris, we don't know if she became mature in the afternoon or in the morning. We don't know what to do. So that's the question on Shmuel Shani. Okay, so this is very similar to mikvah. Why? Because when you plant items, right, and you plant something, it's going to be it's tevel. It's not. You didn't take off trumas and meisers. It's a mixture. There's no trumas and meisers were not separated. So now it has a presumption of not separated. Plus, you have the event that happens. We don't know whether or not it was separated. So presume it wasn't separated. Maybe say put the wine on its chazaka and say it didn't spoil. So the Mar says but it did spoil. So okay, one second. If you're telling me the wine spoiled right now, and therefore it spoiled earlier as well, right now she's a begaris, she's mature, so maybe she matured in the morning too. So what is Shmuel going to say? Hashtahu the bug, what happened immediately? Well, if that's the case, hashtahu the achmetz. Right now the wine got spoiled. So why is 28 days worth of truma not good? In other words, why Shmuel says that we don't know whether she matured in the morning or not, but we do know about the wine. We treat it as spoiled from 3 days after the last inspection. Why is that? Samara says the same thing. Over there, in the previous scenario, there's two problems, right? Problem number one is there's a chazak on the item that it was tevel, presumption of tevel. And number two is a question whether or not there was an event that happened that would take off truma. And that's dependent on what? On the music that was playing. That was again. The second problem is that we don't know if this event was a valid separation of truma. Why? Because we don't know if the barrel that they used was vinegar. So therefore, we say we treat it as tevel vade. However, over here by begaris, there's only one question: was she a begaris today or tomorrow? We don't know. Okay. The Gemara says name of Ketanoi. Let's say this is a machlokes tanom. Mi mitzim miad mi. So what happens? Top of 79b. Who takes away from who? What exactly is the question here? You have somebody who is deathly ill, and he gives all his money to somebody else, and then he gets better. The question is as follows. 1 second. Okay. If he was deathly ill at the time he gave away his assets, then now that he got better, he gets to keep his assets. If he wasn't deathly ill, so then the gift is valid. Okay. So who might see me yadam? The man who was ill, he takes away from those who he gave the gift to, b'lo raya, without any proof. But they can't take away from him without proof. Divrei Rabbi Yaakov. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. In other words, Rabbi Yaakov says, look, he has the money, presume that he gets to keep the money. Rav Nosson says, in Barihu, if he's better, if he's healthy, if he gets better, so then he has to prove that he was a shchivmira. He has to prove he was deathly ill. Why? Because right now he's healthy. So we presume he was healthy in the past as well. This is Rava. However, if he's still deathly ill, so then they have to prove that he was healthy at the time. He was a bar. The bar doesn't mean healthy. A bar sort of means somebody who has a solid chance of living. Whereas a shchivmira is somebody that does not have there's a good chance it's going to be. Okay. Sure. Okay. So name of Rav to Amar Rav Nosson. Rav goes Rav Nosson. Let's look at him right now. If right now he's deathly ill, presume he was deathly ill in the past. If right now he's likely to live, presume in the past he was also likely to live. And Shmuel goes with Rav Yaakov. Shmuel goes with Rav Yaakov. He had the money in the beginning. Presume it's still his money. Name Rav to Amar Rav Nosson. Shmuel to Amar Rav Yaakov. Rav would say to you, I know that Amar I feel like Rav Yaakov. I can go with Rav Yaakov's opinion as well. Ad can like Amar Rav Yaakov Hassam Nikola Meimer Haman Maman Al Chatzkosli. Okay. Rabbi Yaakov's scenario has a cheskes moment. And like I pointed out to you, before, what's a cheskes mammon? A cheskes mammon is if you have the money in the past, we presume it's still your money. And this, by the way, is true, perhaps because of chazaka de mikara. In other words, anything that happens in the past, always presume it should be the same in the future. But also, it can be much more than that. Cheskes mammon is considered much more presumptive than any other chazaka de mikara. If the money was in your domain, we have to presume it's yours. That's sort of a utilitarian concept. Otherwise, it's very hard to live. Can't really live that way. Every time somebody has money, you're not sure. Oh, you had it yesterday. That's not how it works.
Speak to the bank.
I'm sorry?
Speak to the bank.
Yeah. However, over here, with the girl in question, there's no chazaka really, because she's going to mature at some point. So this is a cheskes moment against the chazaka de mikara that's asuy lehishtanas. It's going to change. So therefore, if she becomes a begaras now, then we say that what we see now is much more important than the fact that in the past we knew she was a child, she was immature, and we knew at some point that would change as well. So in other words, in a certain sense, the past presumption doesn't really counter the current evidence, and that's because the current evidence dictates to us because the past presumption was something that was going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it changes is no surprise to anybody. It was going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Shmuel says, I can go even with the opinion of Rav Nosson. I can like Amar Rav Nosson Hasan the Kulam of Cheskes Briam Kaimi. Rav Nosson sort of agrees to the premise that everybody is presumptive to live. Second. Okay. In other words, the typical presumption according to Rav Nachman is that a person is going to live, and therefore the truth of the matter is it's really up to him to make the point that he wasn't going to live. So if he's a shchiv mirah, if right now he's deathly ill, so that sort of makes the point. Right now he's deathly ill. Presume he was deathly ill in the past as well. However, in the scenario of begaras, the fact that currently she's a begaras doesn't prove anything, because many of the people that are become mature on the last day, and therefore it doesn't counter the fact that in the past she was an Ira, she was immature. Therefore, we can still presume she was immature until later that day. One second. Okay, so Mara says, okay, so that wasn't a good setup of arguing that Rav and Shmuel were machlekes Tanam. Let's try again. Name kahana tonight. Let's say it's like this opinion: Kitcha avia b'derech, v'kitcha atzam be'ir, v'harehi b'geras. Similar story. The father, it's basically the same story. The father sort of accepts Kiddushin on the roads. She accepts Kiddushin in the city, and that day she's a begaras. Tanechada, one brayso says, "Harei begaras lefanenu." Right now she's begaras, therefore her Kiddushin is valid, not her father's. The Tanya Idach and another brayso says, "Chashin leKiddushin shneim." We're concerned for both Kiddushin. It's a suffix. Ma'alav chad krav chad kishmuel. One's like Rav, one's like Shmuel. Samar says, "No, loy idi kishmuel." Both of these braysos can be going like Shmuel. Kan b'mak chashosai, kan b'she'ein mak chashosai. Okay. The debate here is where she is countering her father's opinion. Her father says you only became begaras today, and we don't know. And she says, no, I became begaras yesterday. And over here is sort of debate. Everyone agrees really it's a suffix Kiddushin. However, in the brayso, when there's a contradiction between the girl and her father, one opinion says we believe the girl, therefore we treat her as a begaras from yesterday, and her father's Kiddushin is not valid. Okay, 1 second. So if we're telling me that the resolution to the brayso is the name of minim asisin lepligi, because the brayso is not arguing, on Rav and Shmuel. They're not. That's not the debate of Rav and Shmuel. They're having a debate whether or not they contradict what the story is when they contradict each other. So maybe Rav and Shmuel actually don't even disagree. Rav is talking about where they're contradicting each other. And Rav, in other words, where she says she was Mikudeshes a day earlier, that's what Rav says. If she says yesterday, I was married yesterday, so then the halacha is that if she says she was married yesterday, then she can presume. 1 second here. Then Rav says she's believed, and she's her Kiddushin is valid, not her father's. And Shmuel is not talking about whether it's a contradiction. And Shmuel says if there's no contradiction, it's a self-Kiddushin. Maybe that's the debate. So Mara says, is that logical? It can't be. Why? There's a story. Rav Yosef, brother of Rav Menashe Mitvil. Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Menashe from the town of Tvil, Ovad Uvdik Havasei Rav. He did a story like Rav. He passed in that her Kiddushin was valid, not the father's. The Eked Shmuel was very upset. The Amr, he says, Kulal Makayle Bekaba Zuto. Behind Rabbanon Kovile Bekaba Rabba. He says the average rabbi, he's okay, but you're like super intelligent. Like you could think you can do like rabbi. Like where's the humility to say that it's a suffix Kiddushin? Because we don't know, and it should be a suffix. You should require a divorce. If you say there's no debate, why was he being upset at him? Presumably the story that he did was when the girl said she was a begaris yesterday. So Amar Ravashi, Meimer says in the name of Ravashi, this is what Meimer said, Hilchsak Havasei the Shmuel, the halacha follows Shmuel, Ravashi Amar, Hilchsak Havasei the Rav, Hilchsak Havasei the Rav. Halacha follows the opinion of Rav. This is an interesting category, because generally speaking, Rav and Shmuel, when there's a debate, the halacha is like Rav with regard to Isser V'Heter, and like Shmuel when it comes to judgment, to din. This Kiddushin somewhere in between. It's both Isser V'Heter and din. Din meaning financial matters, things that are ruled in a court. So yeah, this is interesting. We're passing like Rav. This sort of can go either way because it's really right in the middle.
So how does it end up? Okay.
What was that?
How does it actually end up?
Halacha follows like Rav, which means that on that day the Kiddushin would be her Kiddushin, not her father's. This is another classical story here in Asar Yochsan. Somebody goes on a long journey. They move to a different country. They come back after 10 years. And he comes with his wife and kids. And he says, this Hare Hizu, the woman that I married here in Portland before I moved to Kuala Lumpur, this is her. And we had our kids there. Ain't Sarach Lahavi Raya, she does not need to bring a proof. Loyal Isha, loyal Abonim, not on the woman, not on the children. In other words, we trust that this was the woman he married in Portland, and therefore the kids' lineage is based on the status of the woman. So we know, presumably before they got married, we investigated her status, so we know what she is. So therefore, he can marry. Those kids are eligible to get married to a Kohanim potentially. Okay, Mesa, let's say the woman dies. Let's say he comes back and he says, she died back in Kuala Lumpur, but these are her kids. So maybe Raya al-Abonim, maybe Raya al-Isha. He needs to prove that the kids are her kids, and we already know who she is. So he doesn't have to prove that she is of an acceptable lineage, because we know her. Isha Nasasim Medinas Yam. So let's say he says, look, I went to Ghana and I got married in Ghana. And this is the woman I married there. And these are her children. So maybe Raya al Isha, Raya al Abonim. He has to prove that the woman is of proper lineage. I don't know how many eligible kosher girls there are in Ghana, but he would have to make that. He would have to prove that, but he doesn't have to prove the kids. Why? Because the kids we can go by the mother. We'll soon see that there's sort of a major qualifier there, but we'll get to it. Mesa, let's say he says the woman died. So I got married in Ghana to a woman. That woman died, and these are her children. Right? It's a suspicious story here. Right? Because it could be those children from Mamzerim, and he's sort of trying to pass them off as Gemara says, he has to prove that the woman he married is what her lineage is, And second of all, that these kids belong to that woman. Okay. Amar Rabbi Rav Huna points out the qualifier here. The kulon bekruchen achral. All of these scenarios are situations where the kids are sort of connected to the mother, meaning that they're young children. So they need the mother, and presumably if a mother comes with the young children, you presume the young children belong to the father. That's the presumption. One second. Total Rabbanon. The Bryce says, Isha Netzasim Dinas. Yeah, maybe Rayla. Isha ain't Sarach Lahavi Rayal Alabanim. So he says they got married to a woman in Ghana. He proves that the woman is of kosher lineage, and we presume the kids belong to that woman. Maybe Rayal Agdalim, but ain't Sarach Lahavi Rayal Alaktanim. And if he proves that the older kids are from that woman, he doesn't have to prove the younger kids are from that woman. When is this true? Okay, in other words, so let's say he says that woman died, and he has older kids and younger kids, and he proves the older kids came from that woman, then we can rely on him for the younger kids as well. When is this true? If he says he only got married to one woman, but if he claims he got married to two women, maybe Raya ala Isha, alabonim, alakdanim, alaktanim. He has to prove that the women are, good lineage candidates. Obviously, the kids would not be mamzerim or otherwise invalid to marry Kayan. And he also has to prove that the kids were from those wives. Amar Shlakish. Okay, so why is it so important to prove the lineage? What are the choices? So, like we said before, there are two or three possible choices. Number one is to be a Kayan. If the guy claims he's a Kayan, well, maybe your wife, maybe he married the son of a grusha, maybe he married a woman who was divorced, or a halala, or he married a mamzer or a non-Jew, etc., or convert after 3 years old. That's one point. And the second point is, are his kids eligible to marry a Kayan? So Rish Lakish says here, Rish Lakish, top of Hey Amid Aleph, Lo Shanu Ela B'Katshei Gvul. This is only true with regard to a Kayan eating truma. Ala B'Yochsin Loy. 1 second. But if you want your kids to marry a Kayan, then we're not going to rely on this chazaka. In that case, 1 second. In that case, you'd have to prove that the kids belong to your wife as well. Rabbi Yochanan says, afilu b'yochsin, even to marry them, you can also rely on the fact that if she's holding a 3-year-old, presumably it's her 3-year-old. Okay, for Azar, let's see a little bit further. We'll get to this. Just see this, and we'll get to the specifics tomorrow. For Azar, Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his own opinion. To Amar Chia, Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Chia says the name of Rabba and the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Malkin ala chazakas. You can get malchus for violating a presumptive prohibition. We'll explain that in a moment. Cycling b'sarfin ala chazakas. Not only that, you can get capital punishment based on the same violation of presumption. The ain't surfing truma ala chazakas, but that's not true with regard to burning truma. Okay, let's start seeing the specifics here. Just one or two of them. Malkin al chazakas. What's an example of you getting malchus, of getting a penalty for a presumptive prohibition? For Rabbi Yehudah, like the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah. Okay, don't ask me how they knew this, but in the olden days, it's not difficult to figure out how they would know it. But if all the neighbors realize that a woman is a nida, and then 2 witnesses see the husband intimate with his wife, he gets malchus. Now, 1 second, how exactly did they know she was a nida? Because presumably something that they saw indicated to them that she was a nida. But that is only a presumption, because actually today we sort of treat every presumption as a nida, but there are some sort of fine differences, and they don't know that for certainty. Even if she's sort of wearing clothes that are stained, it doesn't necessarily mean she's a nida. And yet we still give malchus because she has a presumption of being a nida. Okay, next one. You can basically get capital punishment because of a chazaka. What's an example of that? Like the story of Rabbi Rav Huna. Ish v'isha tinik v'tinogas shegdilu b'seich habayis. Niskol and zelza v'nisraf and zelza. You have basically a family unit. You have a father and a mother and two kids that grew up in the same house for 20 years. And then we find the son is sleeping with his mother, right? It's this potential capital punishment there. And well, we don't know she's his mother. Moreover, let's say he goes ahead and he what's it called? He hits his father or curses his father. We don't know who. Nobody really knows who their father is. Before the 23andMe. So, but the answer is because they live in the same house, they're living like a family unit. We presume that they're a family unit, and therefore they get the same level of severe penalties. Okay, with regard to truma, we'll continue this tomorrow. Okay.
Tomorrow's an early day.
A great day. Thursday. Oh, it's Thursday. Yes.
Wishing more early about tomorrow than usual.
No.
Just a reminder. Would you like